It was a normal summer day in 1985. Passengers were in high spirits as they embarked on their journey from Tokyo to Osaka, aboard Japan Flight 123. However, a mere 12 minutes into what was supposed to be a routine flight, the unexpected happened. The aircraft spiraled out of control in the Japanese skies. The massive tail of the aircraft detached from its body, sending shockwaves of panic throughout the cabin. What had caused this catastrophic event, leading to the death of 15 crew and 505 passengers on board, and the world's deadliest single aircraft crash to this day? Every August in Japan, millions of people come together to celebrate Obon, a special holiday dedicated to honoring their ancestors. During this time, families make their way back to their ancestral homes for gatherings and remembrance. By the 12th of August, the holiday travel rush was already in full swing. To accommodate the vast number of travelers, Japan's national carrier, Japan Airlines, used long-haul aircraft like the Boeing 747 for very short domestic flights. One of these routes connected the capital, Tokyo, to Osaka, Japan's second-largest city. Even outside of peak travel times, this route was heavily traveled, but during Obon, it became overwhelmingly crowded. On the 12th of August, one of the numerous flights on this route was the Japan Airlines Flight. This specific aircraft was manufactured and provided to Japan Airlines back in 1974 and had flown for a total of just over 25,000 flight hours. And on that day, it loaded 509 passengers and 15 crew. Leading this extensive group of passengers was Captain Masami Takahama, a 49-year-old seasoned instructor captain with 12,400 flight hours under his belt. On this particular day, he took the first officer's seat because he was mentoring First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, who was 39 years old and training to become a captain. As a result, Sasaki occupied the seat typically reserved for the captain. Completing the cockpit crew was 46-year-old flight engineer Hiroshi Fukuda. With First Officer Sasaki in control, Japan Flight 123 embarked on its journey from Tokyo's Haneda Airport at 6:12 p.m. local time, destined for a short 54-minute flight to Osaka. However, just 12 minutes into the journey, at 6:24 p.m., the unimaginable happened. A sudden explosive decompression rocked the aircraft, tearing through its structure. The ceiling around the rear lavatories collapsed, and the fuselage's unpressurized section at the rear suffered severe damage. The vertical stabilizer was wrenched away, and all 4 hydraulic lines ruptured, plunging the aircraft into chaos. In response, the pilots activated the aircraft's transponder to send out a distress signal. Captain Takahama contacted the Tokyo Area Control Center to declare an emergency and requested permission to return to Haneda Airport. They were instructed to descend and given emergency landing instructions to Oshima. But as they initiated a right-hand turn toward Oshima, disaster loomed. The aircraft banked steeply at a harrowing 40-degree angle. Captain Takahama desperately attempted to regain control, instructing the first officer to level the aircraft, but their efforts were futile. Panic set in as the aircraft became nearly impossible to manage, and Captain Takahama ordered a descent. Between 6:26 and 6:31 p.m., the aircraft's course became erratic, veering away from the Pacific Ocean and then back toward the shore, but not on a course back to Haneda Airport. It initially turned away from the Pacific Ocean and then back toward the shore, but the turn was not sufficient to head back to Haneda Airport. Tokyo Control attempted to communicate with the aircraft, but there was no response. indicating that hypoxia, a lack of oxygen, may have been affecting the crew. As the aircraft traversed Suruga Bay and flew over Yaesu, it was a scene of chaos. Uncontrollable movements plagued the aircraft, refusing to descend as required. Phugoid oscillations gripped it, causing wild climbs and descents, while Dutch roll added to the mayhem. Yet, amid this nightmare, the pilots continued their battle for control. During this time, there were discussions about using emergency oxygen masks, but none of the pilots actually put them on. Eventually, the pilots were able to regain some limited control by adjusting engine thrust, but it was challenging to suppress the Dutch roll mode using differential thrust between the engines. The landing gear was lowered to dampen the aircraft's oscillations, which somewhat helped stabilize it. However, this also reduced the aircraft's directional control, and its descent toward Otsuki continued. As the aircraft descended below 7,000 feet, the looming mountains became an ominous threat. Fluctuations in cabin altitude mirrored the perilous situation. At 6:48 p.m., a desperate move saw maximum engine power applied to climb and avoid the mountains. However, it triggered a turbulent phugoid motion and a brief stall at 9,000 feet. The captain's last-ditch effort involved lowering the flaps, but it wasn't enough. The aircraft was locked in an unrecoverable right-hand descent. Despite frantic attempts to retract the flaps and apply more power, disaster was inevitable. Passengers were confused, gripped by terror as they began to lose all hope for survival. The first impact came as the rightmost engine collided with trees on a ridge, causing a sharp roll to the right. The aircraft struck another ridge, tearing away the weakened tail, the outer third of the right wing, and the remaining 3 engines. It flipped upside down, hitting another ridge near Mount Takamagahara, and exploded. The crash site lay hidden in a remote area, perched at a daunting elevation of approximately 1,565 meters within the untamed terrain of Gunma Prefecture, Japan. The fateful descent reached its tragic culmination around 6:56 p.m., marking 32 agonizing minutes since the initial breach of the bulkhead. A United States Air Force navigator stationed at Yokota Air Base had been monitoring the distress calls from the aircraft, and a US Air Force C-130 crew was the first to spot the crash site approximately 20 minutes after impact. They prepared a search and rescue operation. However, this operation was reportedly aborted at the request of Japanese authorities, who preferred to send their own country's rescue forces to the scene of the crash. Rescue teams finally set out for the crash site the following morning. Unfortunately, when they arrived, they discovered lifeless bodies that bore witness to the brutal struggle for survival amidst the unforgiving wilderness. In all of the 524 passengers and crew, only 4 survived. The investigation into the Japan Airlines Flight 123 crash unveiled a shocking truth. It was revealed that the catastrophic structural failure resulted from a flawed repair carried out by Boeing technicians in the aftermath of an incident 7 years earlier involving Japan Airlines Flight 115. During that incident, the aircraft bounced heavily while landing at Itami Airport, leading to a severe tail strike on touchdown. Fortunately, there were no fatalities among the 394 people on board, but 25 individuals suffered injuries. The tail strike inflicted damage to the aircraft's aft pressure bulkhead. Boeing technicians were tasked with mending the damaged bulkhead, but their repair approach deviated from Boeing's approved procedures. Instead of following the prescribed method of using a single continuous splice plate with 3 rows of rivets, they opted for 2 splice plates parallel to the stress crack. Astonishingly, the ill-fated aircraft completed 12,318 flights from the time of the flawed repair to the tragic accident. The crash of Japan Airlines Flight 123 struck a devastating blow to the airline. Public trust crumbled, causing a drastic 1/3 decline in passengers on domestic routes. Financially, JAL bore the weighty burden of offering $7.6 million to console the grieving families, all without admitting wrongdoing. But the tragedy's somber notes didn't end there. Within the airline's ranks, Hiru Tominaga, JAL's maintenance manager, and Susumu Tajima, the engineer who had vouched for the ill-fated aircraft's airworthiness, both took their own lives, possibly burdened by a sense of responsibility for the calamity. In response to the tragedy, Boeing made significant safety improvements to their aircraft. If this story moved you, then be sure to watch another one.